Evening, everybody. My name is Ingvar Anderson. I'm the executive director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is a nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books, and Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. We are really excited to be here tonight celebrating Black Girls Must Die Exhausted with Jayne Allen and Tamara Winfrey Harris. This is actually the second time we have celebrated Black Girls Must Die Exhausted. And we're going to invite Jayne to tell a little bit about that story because her story really is exceptional. It is a true literary success story, and it's very rare. And we are very, very, very happy for you, Jayne, that this has happened for you. So I'm really thrilled, actually, that it's interesting because later in the month, we're going to be celebrating with Tamara's re-release of a book that we celebrated earlier in her career as well. And so I love that the fates have kind of brought y'all together as people getting to celebrate books that you really put your heart and soul in and made successful. And now there's more resources behind them, more energy behind them, and they're really getting the credit that they deserve. So really, this is a lovely pairing, and I am really thrilled about that. So let me formally introduce both of our panelists tonight. So Jayne Allen is the pen name of Janique Seeley, a graduate of Duke University and Harvard Law School. An avid traveler, she speaks 3 languages and has visited 5 continents. Drawing from her unique experiences as an attorney and entrepreneur, she crafts transcultural stories that touch upon contemporary women's issues such as workplace and career dynamics, race, fertility, modern relationships, and mental health awareness. Her writing echoes her desire to bring both multiculturalism and multidimensionality to a rich and colorful cast of characters, inspired by the magic uncovered in everyday life. Black Girls Must Die Exhausted is her first novel, which she calls The Epitaph of my 30s. A proud native of Detroit, she currently lives in Los Angeles. And she's joined by Tamara Winfrey Harris, whose writing on race and gender has appeared in the New York Times, The Atlantic, New York Magazine, Los Angeles Times, Bitch, and other media. She is the author of the award-winning book, The Sisters Are All Right, Changing the Broken Narrative of Black Women in America, and Dear Black Girl, Letters from Your Sisters on Stepping into Your Power. And as I mentioned before, we will be celebrating The Sisters That Are All Right a little bit later this month, so keep an eye out for that as well. And yeah, there it is. So I want to welcome everybody who's watching at home. If you want to shout out where you're watching from, we always love to know that. And if you'd like to ask a question, you can do that by clicking the Ask a Question tab in the bottom center of your screen. Or if you want to put a question in the chat, I will move it over. And finally, I meant to say earlier that this is also a sort of full circle moment because we are gathered in the virtual space with Auburn Avenue Research Library. And your first event with us was also at the Auburn Avenue Research Library. So this is true. That's true. It's a very full circle. So I love it. And we're very honored to have Morris Gardner from the Auburn Avenue Research Library with us tonight in the chat, dropping further links and knowledge. So it's a real homecoming for everybody. So glad you're here. So excited for your success. And can't wait to hear this conversation.
Thank you.
Hello. I am so excited to be in conversation with you.
I am honored. I am like verklempt, but I am so excited. I was looking forward to this all week, and it's been quite a week. So thank you.
I'm going to tell everyone that is watching that I could go on and on and on because I love this book and I love Jayne. I have all these questions, but if you have any questions, just stick them down in the Ask a Question area and I will work those in. Don't be shy or else I'll just keep talking and keep talking to Jayne and peppering her with questions. But first, my friend, I would love to ask you, for those the uninitiated who may be watching, who haven't had the pleasure of reading your book yet, and you can get it right below on that button right below. What is Black Girls Must Die Exhausted about? What's the narrative?
Well, in short, Black Girls Must Die Exhausted is my take on a perspective on contemporary Black womanhood, with a desire to bring authenticity to the narrative. And I am a contemporary fiction fan. I like chick lit, but I didn't really see a lot of people I recognized in a lot of those narratives that I enjoy. I like, stories of women in contemporary society finding their way and making their journeys and achieving the goals that they seek after. But I saw representative characters, meaning they're, brown skin, they are black, they have black hair texture, but they're what the inside wasn't there, the layers weren't there. I'm like, well, wait a minute, well, why, if she has natural hair at work, then how did she make that decision? So that for me, I wanted to see the layers and the texture of a character living a story that wasn't particularly about trauma in and of itself and wasn't just about race, but was about a woman finding her way and seeking fulfillment. So that was how Tabitha Walker, who is the protagonist of Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, came about. And it's her story. She's the center of the story, but there's plenty of supporting, colorful characters around her. She's 33 years old, and she finds out the day we meet her, she finds out that she has a reproductive health issue. And it sends her life into a tailspin, because up until that point, she had been living the perfect purported checklist, as she had been conditioned to believe that she was supposed to lead: job, relationship, setting herself up, doing all that stuff. And then, reproductive health is an economic issue, and so she has all these competing decisions she has to make now, and everything becomes amplified, from her work situation, the need to now really compete for the promotion, avoiding being overlooked, and all of it. And also really getting an understanding of family, what that means, and how she's going to go about dealing with her desire to create a family for herself. So that's kind of the overarching story, but it really encompasses, it sets this landscape to explore so many issues that we face as Black women in contemporary society that we don't even realize. There's just a weight there. And so the book is meant to be an acknowledgement and a celebration, and ultimately to kind of flip the meaning of the title into something inspirational, which is, I think, a cultural thing. We flipped meanings all the time. And so that was what I wanted to do with this.
There were many things that I loved about the book, but two things that I really loved is you can always tell when a book is truly written for us. Because like you say, there's one thing, it's one thing to just take a character that could be white, that could be anything, and just give her a Black face. But It's another to put her in experiences like being stopped by a police officer and getting so stressed out and afraid that is real, or dealing with struggles in the workplace that are specifically unique to Black women. And so you could tell in reading the book that this was written for us. And this wasn't just, these characters could be anyone. No, these characters are Black women. And then also, the book touches on some heavy issues, very relevant issues. So, race, fertility, romance, mental health, like I said, even what it feels like to be stopped by the police. But it's also in this really light and enjoyable narrative. And I saw you call your writing chocolate chick lit. And I wonder why you're drawn to write your stories in that way, because, this story could be written as a really heavy drama if you wanted to, right?
Right. Well, I thought that my goal wasn't to re-traumatize anybody. And I think life is so traumatic as it we experience it, especially in as Black women. There's so many layers, there's so much heaviness, and I thought it was important to authentically acknowledge it, because otherwise it's not an authentic narrative. But to really try to craft the story where it could be uplifting, and it was real meant to be a celebration, to say, look, society tells us that we're undesirable and miserable and all of these things, but in spite of those things, and there's real issues, there's real weight, and some of the things we just gloss over and don't even acknowledge, but it still weighs on us. So in spite of all that, we bring this joy and this culture and this sparkle and this love and humor and all of these things that if you just stop and think, you know, the Black women that you know, it's just like, wow. And I just wanted to showcase that and make that the focal point, you know, authentically. And so, you know, I wanted to give us contemporary fiction too, you know, and like Bridget Jones, what about, you know, Brigitte Jones, you know, or Brigitte Jenkins, you know, like live that situation, but her story is equally as interesting. And she's got some unique hurdles and perspectives to lend. And we can all learn from a Tabitha Walker. You don't have to be a Black woman to learn from Tabitha Walker's experience. It's a human story. And so that was, I just wanted to keep it, you know, in that celebration space, but also make it authentic where it didn't get washed out. You know, why there's a celebration. There's a celebration because there's surmounting that's happening on a daily basis. So that's what I set out for.
Well, speaking of Black girls celebration and surmounting things, I got a chance before we came live to hear a little bit about your journey, which is so exciting and so unique. And I hope you'll share it. Will you share it with the people listening? So how did you get from this amazing launch and, you know, just so many great reviews, great word of mouth about this book? How'd you get here?
So it's been a journey. It has really been a journey. And it has been a journey of making space where there really wasn't any. And space was not afforded to me when I started with this. You know, it was my first novel, and I knew I wanted to do something authentic to myself. I wasn't really, and what the mission was that I had. I wasn't thinking, I'm going to be a novelist. I've always loved writing and I want to be a writer, but I've always been very purpose focused. And I thought I want to do something that celebrates Black womanhood in a contemporary way and could be the book that I wish somebody handed to me when I was 30. Like, that's what I, you know, or before. I just wish that somebody had been like, here, girl, like, you need this. And so that was what I kind of set out to create. And when I wrote the manuscript, I came up with the title. I knew what I wanted it to be, you know, and I had a group of readers, my family. They loved it and gave me encouraged me to approach traditional publishing. I did approach traditional publishing. I identified agents who represented, you know, Black writers or similar stories, you know, cultural perspectives. So I thought, you know, maybe they'll understand and there'll be interest. And the feedback I got was very disappointing and unfortunately not surprising, except for I didn't get critique on the story itself. I didn't get critique on my writing. I got critique that they did not like my protagonist, or that they did not feel that they could connect to the story, or that they found Tabitha unrelatable. And to me, that was like, what do you mean? And I realized that at the gatekeeper level, I think they're making this projection onto the audience and to readers, and thinking, oh, you know, the mass market of readers is not ready for a story centering this Black woman as authentically. She's not, you know, she's not just kind of painted over with Black name and appearance, and she could be anybody. Like, so no, I guess they projected onto the audience, and I believe differently. I was like, no, we're ready for this. And I know it's not just Black women or not just women who can learn from Tabitha Walker. She's a human being, and she's experiencing these layers of, she's a woman. She's experiencing that, and what society says about that, and what society creates around that. She's a Black woman. She's experiencing Blackness. So what society creates around that, and it has a human impact. And if I can show that, I know readers will connect to it no matter who they are, because it's human to human. Yes. And so in spite of that experience, I decided that to give readers the last say, I had to put it out myself. And I just was going to go for it. And so it was a lot. But I did it with my, you know, after work, with my little money, the coins I put together, rubbed them together and put this out. And, you know, the community of readers just took this and lifted it up and lifted me up, because I couldn't have done this by myself at all, and just pushed it forward. So I wound up through the pandemic meeting with over 60 book clubs. And that's how it led to me meeting my agent. And that's what led to my book deal. And with my publisher, Harper Perennial, who's been amazing team, very supportive, dream experience. And I mean, it could have gone so many ways. It went the best possible way. They were looking at the social media posts and the reviews, and it was undeniable that there was an audience, and they made their voices known, and they made themselves seen, and they were seen. We were seen, and this is us being seen and amplified. And so I share this story because it's not giving up is so important, and also the power of community.
And and the message, I feel like we need more Black femme voices,
Yeah.
in the marketplace. But, being a writer and being an author really takes a thick skin. It takes a thick skin anyway.
Right.
But even more so as a woman of color. I heard with my first book, many of the same things that you said from Black agents. It's, well, this is just for Black women. And so I don't know, we want something more universal. But there is an audience for you if you're out there and thinking of writing something.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think I was in the music industry, and thankfully it showed me, I was there during the time that all of the independent labels proliferated.
Yeah.
And it showed me that sometimes you just have to build it first and show that there is an audience. You just go, if your art is out there, it will attract its people. And so, I had a lot of examples from something else. And I was saying to one of my friends that as a writer, I didn't have the full confidence to that I could write or that people would like it. And I did have, thankfully, the encouragement of my friends. But there's so many questions. You ask yourself, am I good enough? Is this good enough? Is it worthy? Is it intelligent enough? Is it, broad enough? Is it complex enough? All of those things about enoughness. And there are things that will happen to you along the way, some of which are unfair, and some of which are just because you're Black. And you can't let those things that happen to you be the answers to the questions you have about your worthiness. Yeah. And that's the lesson that I had to learn and internalize.
I am so glad that you bet on your own enoughness. We are so lucky that you did. I wonder if you would do us the honor of reading a little bit from the book.
I will. I'm going to read a section. So I'll set this up. I think we may talk about this later, but Tabitha Walker, she's a Black woman. Her grandmother is a white woman, and they have a very close relationship. And one of the reasons that I wanted to create that was because of the intimacy of relationship would allow for some really difficult conversations that we don't have in everyday life. So I kind of use fiction to push the boundaries of everyday interaction. And so in this selection that I'm reading, this is Tabitha and her grandmother for the very first time ever asking each other, what does it feel like to be the race that society has labeled you as? What does that experience feel like? So this is Tabitha's answer. And as her grandmother has asked her, what does it feel like to be Black? How does it feel? I continue, trying to think and still talk. I'd honestly never considered the question before while living it. I can tell you that your thought about it being exhausting, that sounds about right sometimes. A lot of times it does feel exhausting because everything bad in society is about you, but when it comes to the good, nothing is for you. I feel like I'm not enough and too much all at the same time. And then other times being Black feels exhilarating because every good thing that happens feels like a victory, even the small things, because you're constantly reminded that you're an other. So you know whatever good happened in spite of. So there's celebration, there's joy. I paused just to think. It felt so complicated. I pushed myself to find more in the deeper parts, hidden in the folds of my spirit, the secrets. And emptiness is there too, a different kind from what you described though, a need for validation, maybe to be seen, approved of, to matter as an individual, not just a monolith, and a desire to know that if I do follow all the rules, that I get the promise on the other side, just like anyone else. And by anyone else, I mean anyone else who is white.
I love that. And it is so funny that you chose that passage. I feel like you're looking at my questions over because literally my next question was about that scene.
Oh, good. Okay.
I love that. Was one of my favorite scenes. And it's like you've created a really complex life for Tabby, right? And complex relationships. And, she's living the experience of a Black woman in America, but then, she has this close relationship with her paternal grandmother, who is a white woman. And I wonder, like, what inspired you to give her a multiracial family and to make this interracial relationship so important in her life?
Well, when I thought about this book, and I love this part of it, I love that scene too. I thought that was the one I most look forward to writing. I was like, "Ooh, how's this going to go?" But I wanted to explore race as authentically as I could through Tabitha's character, and to do that, I started to think about what is race, as a construct. What is it? I had to read about it, try to think about it, figure it out, and I realized it's a societal construct, and the existence of Blackness is because of the existence of whiteness. Mm-hmm. And so you can't really talk about Blackness without whiteness. And to really examine it, there has to be the juxtaposition there. So for Tabitha, it would have made it a bit culturally different, I think, to give her a white parent, to give her a white grandparent. That allowed for this intimacy and relationship closeness, but it also allowed Tabitha to be culturally Black without questioning, without the complexity there for her. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to, so that was the decision I made with that. And then creating their relationship, and also Tabitha's grandmother allowed me to show and explore the effect of race generationally and on people who aren't Black, who come into family and familiar relationships with people who are, and how does it affect them? Like, this is a heavy thing for everybody, and it was just, so it was, and those characters, I just, I wound up loving them both very much. And, the space of love that they created allowed for this really authentic conversation that's not representative of all Black people, not all white people, but just for them. And I put a lot of pressure on myself at first, because I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, no, I had to remind myself, it's just them. It's just Granny Tab, what Granny Tab would say. Because it's to this big question, mm-hmm. Like, what would Granny Tab say? And what would Tabitha Walker say? And just, that's going to be enough. So I had to take some pressure off. And I was like, if people ask me, like, no, this is not speaking for all Black people, they're all white people, just these two characters. So it was, but I couldn't wait to write that scene, because it was like, I was like, why don't we have conversations like this regularly? Like, why wouldn't? And even in a family, you wouldn't.
Right.
And I'm like, why is that? So, so it was just, I was really looking forward to that.
Well, the fact that this is her beloved grandmother, I think, gives an opening and a level of trust that she might not have if you had to write that conversation with a coworker.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I love that. So, and the other thing that you tackle in this book, in addition to race, so we meet Tab on her perhaps the worst day of her life.
Yeah. Like, worst day ever.
Worst day ever. And she's facing a serious fertility problem. Mm-hmm. And there aren't a lot of stories about Black women and fertility problems, even though, I was looking at studies, and, Black women may be twice as likely as white women to have fertility problems, and less likely to get infertility treatment. Yeah. So, but there's a lot of silence around that, as well as maternal and infant mortality. And so what made you make fertility a central issue in Black Girls Must Die Exhausted?
It was partially my own personal journey. And that's why I say the epitaph of my 30s. And what I wish somebody had handed this to me, because I did deal with a journey of infertility journey. I dealt with fibroids. I had to I've been single. I'm still single at 43, and I had to think about family planning options. And by the time I was in a position to have options in front of me, it was my late 30s, because fertility, reproduction, all of that is an economic issue. Whether you choose to reproduce, whether you do not, it's an economic issue all the way around. I wish that someone had talked to me about this when I was in my 20s, or when I had more options and could make different choices. I mean, just down to employers offering different healthcare options and different insurance coverages that could deal with infertility in different ways. And it's not equally covered, just knowing that little bit. So for me, infertility, fertility, reproductive health is a war of information. And it's something that people deal with often in silence. And for Black women, there's all these presumptions that, there's the myth of hyperfertility and all these things that we don't get to really acknowledge and explore and share, even as much as, maybe our non-Black counterparts on this topic. And when I went through the journey, there were maybe a handful of books by anybody, about egg freezing, or even pursuing motherhood on my own, or, all what options I could pursue, or how to treat fibroids, or different options, or what if you don't want to have hysterectomy? What if, and there's just no information. So my dog is back here making a, but there were no options. And so, or very few, too few. So, and especially not in fiction. And and I think fiction is so important because it allows us to get into story, and it lets us play the whole story out. And it gives us courage sometimes when you need it. If you could just see it, it gives us acknowledgement, and it gives us permission to talk about things. So it's normalizing. And I felt like it was important to just normalize this subject in particular, especially for Black women, but just even beyond, because it's still something that's kind of dealt with in silence. There's a lot of shame around it. So I wanted, if I could do something to help that, then that was important to me.
I think, and that's another thing that's so special about this book, the fact that it touches on infertility, because I think you're right. It's one thing to be able to go pull a book off the shelf that talks about the problem of infertility. And there aren't many of those centered on Black women either, but it's another to just see it as a plot point in a book that's a chick lit book.
Right.
And that is the thing that's normalizing, that this is the thing women deal with.
Yeah, it's life. Yeah. And that was, I think that was kind of, I guess maybe that's when you're asking about chick lit and like, women's contemporary fiction. I feel like chick lit is like, it sounds like it's like, super light. But when you're a Black woman, like the story could be light, but there's some realities that, we deal with that are kind of heavy. So it was, for me, I'm like, but we do it lightly, we do it seamlessly. We do it with flair. So I wanted to, so this is like life for Tabitha, this is an authentic life for her. And it's not heavy because she's mastered a way to not make it not be heavy, and she's been handling it. And so I think that's something to observe and acknowledge and celebrate too, all of this, but it doesn't mean it's not there. So
it's that, it's sort of like what I wrote about in The Sisters Are All Right. We are all right. Tab is all right. She has problems.
Oh, I love it.
Not defined by her problems and skulking around, and she has burdens, but that doesn't define her. And I think the way you've written this story shows that, exemplifies that.
Thank you. I love that. Tab is all right. I like that almost needs to be a quote. I love that.
So I know you guys are listening to this great conversation, and if you don't have this book, you better get it right below, right? The button down there. And while you're down there, ask a question. I want to ask you a question. You use a pen name.
Yes.
Jayne Allen is actually your pen name. Your, as they say, your government name.
My government name, right? Exactly.
Government name is Janique Seeley. And I wonder if you would share why you chose to write under a pen name.
The short answer is I just didn't have the courage to move forward with what I really wanted to do at the time under my name. I had, this was my 5 to 9. I had my 9 to 5, and a space that really wasn't for this particular kind of work. And I knew coming with something called Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, I didn't want to have to explain. I didn't want to have to ask for permission. I didn't want to create excuses for myself or obstacles that, were related to being afraid of being judged or penalized or something like that. So I just said, okay, look, if I create a pen name, this creates space for me. I guess that's the theme, creating space. So the pen name allowed me to create space for myself to be authentic in what I wanted to express, and to be an author and to be an artist when I didn't really, the life I had created and crafted, didn't really have that space. So this Jayne Allen is a creative space for my expression.
I love the way you present. It has made me think about my own career differently, because early in my career, I wasn't as creative as you. I just wrote under Tamara Winfrey Harris. You can tell in hide and go seek, I was the first person to be found. Isn't that different?
It's a little remix. It's a little bit of a remix. I get it. It's different.
But but the idea of it's not about hiding, it's about making space for yourself. Like that's a beautiful way to describe that.
Yeah.
But I also think it's a powerful example of maybe why so many Black women I speak to live exhausted, because we almost always by necessity maintain these dual identities,
right?
even if not explicitly, and even if not for negative reasons. There's a we're Beyonce and Sasha Fierce.
Exactly. I think about it. Yes, Jayne Allen is kind of my Sasha Fierce.
Our right. Tamara and Tammy, right?
Right. Well, I think, and you kind of talk about this too in your book, which I love, this unpacking, what society has imposed and created for us this experience. And, we're now in the process of deciding, no, I'm a human being. It's not about, comporting just to survive. I want fulfillment. That's a human need and a desire. I want, to be happy. I want to be healthy. These are human needs and desires. And I think we're starting to embrace those. It's breaking through beyond the confines and constraints of the societal impositions. And so I think you see the Sasha Fierce, and Beyonce's like, yeah, I'm society's telling me to be prim and proper in this way, but no, I want to be, fierce and fearless. And and I think that's kind of, we're making cracks and creating space for ourselves. And it's just something to, I think it's something to celebrate, and it's not hiding. It's in spite of. It's like doing it anyway. Just, we're going to go around and find a workaround, and that's definitely a cultural thing too. We will make a way.
So I stalked you around the internet a little bit when I found out we were going to be talking. And the one thing, and everyone watching got a chance to hear your story at the beginning of our conversation. And there's such a joy as you've been interviewed. I just feel such a joy, just Black girl joy, just radiating from you. And, that made me wonder, I've heard you say that Tabitha was living a word and she realized the word was exhausted. I wonder what word you are living right now and why.
I think my word right now is seeking. I am a seeker right now. I'm trying to figure out the fundamental truths of life and go get my full portion of it, the good things.
I love that. Seeking. There's more. There's more
There's
abundance
more,
on the
more
way.
good, more good. Yes, all of it, all the good, more good things.
Speaking of more good, I know Black Girls Must Die Exhausted is part of a trilogy.
Yes, yes.
So can you like sneak spoil? What can we look forward to for Tabby besides a little one?
So she is also on her path of being a seeker. She's looking for fulfillment, and she is starting to question what that should look like. And for her, she's still very much tied to societal kind of constraints, and it starts to unravel in a bigger way for her in the subsequent books. So the second book is Black Girls Must Be Magic. That's the next book. And so we're tackling the next leg of her journey as she figures out what does she actually want from a relationship standpoint, from a family standpoint, from a career standpoint. And so she gets, I give her that space to start to break down this and see what happens on the other side of the societal expectations when that breaks down, and you start dialing into what do you really want, and also you start to see a little bit of healing in the people that are around her.
So the book is actually available for pre-order, right?
It is.
There's a link if you look in the chat. And while you're in that chat link, you could just scoot on over and hit that link right there and buy Black Girls Must Die Exhausted. So like you read one. And so when does book 2 come out?
February.
See?
Yes. So I'm going to grab my dog because he is, this is my dog, Mocha.
Hey, Luca.
Yeah, so he is making, if you hear crashing over there, he has done all kinds of things while we've been in this conversation. So Black Girls Must Be Magic will be available in February. And so I'm really excited about that. And then the third book, TBD with the title, will be available also in 2022. Yes.
So I am making space on my shelf for all three.
Thank you. That means so much to me, honestly.
The best thing about these virtual book events now is the crashing by pets. So
yeah.
I love it. If I didn't have the door closed, there would be 2 cats like converging
on your head. But if he could, he would literally be sitting, he wants to probably be part of the conversation broadcast, but I'm trying to hold him in place.
So now we play a game.
Yes.
Luca, you can play too. All right, everybody who's listening, you can put your answers in the chat if you'd like to. So women's friendships, also an important theme in Black Girls Must Die Exhausted. And so often we know that when friendships are presented in literature and TV and pop culture, each friend represents a certain archetype. So everyone has someone to relate to.
Yeah.
So I, Jayne, am going to name some famous friend groups.
Okay.
You tell me which friend best fits your personality. Ready?
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
All right. From Sex and the City.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a Carrie, a Samantha, a Charlotte, or a Miranda?
I'm a Samantha.
Ooh. Okay, now I want to change all my questions.
I know it surprises a lot of people, except the people that know me. They're like, "Oh yeah, definitely."
I love it. All right. So in living single, are you a Maxine, a Regine, a Sinclair, or a Khadijah?
I'm probably a little bit of a mix, but I would say I'm a Maxine.
A Maxine. Okay. Yeah.
Maxine.
Maxie Esquire. I get it.
That's right. Little, dry humor, that's probably more me.
So I don't know whether you watched this show, The L Word.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ashamed?
I watched, okay, but I don't remember the characters as much, but I watched every episode.
I did. I watched it till the very last, very bizarre final.
You know what? I remember the real L word now more than I remember the L word.
Well, if you can remember a Shane, a Bet, a Jenny, a Tina, a Dana, or an Alice.
You know what? I don't remember the characters' names. Does that sound right?
We're gonna pass. Bet was Jennifer. Yes.
Because that's the name that's sticking out to me. Bet.
Yes. Yeah.
Does that sound right?
She's a responsible one. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm always the boring, responsible one. Insecure.
Yes.
Are you an Issa, a Molly, a Kelly, or a Tiffany?
I'm more of a Kelly.
Ooh. All right. If we are ever in the same place, drinks, for real, we're gonna hang out.
I know there's stories to share. Believe I like everything's the reality might be stranger than the fiction. Let me just say.
All right, last one. Girlfriends. Are you a Joan, a Lynn, a Maya, or a Tony?
I think I'm probably closest to Joan still in my life.
Joan, okay. I love
probably
it.
Still.
You're like the responsible one, but also with like a sexy side.
Yes, exactly. As I get older, you know what I mean? Because I in my 30s, I was very, very responsible, and then I'm still responsible, but now I'm just like, wait a minute, I'm grown.
Yeah.
I'm grown, as Beyonce says. So I'm like, okay, let me live life.
You can be responsible, but not be a good girl.
Right.
And that's where I will leave that.
Yes, I like that. And I take that and accept that. Yes.
Yes.
I would put that in my bag. Mm-hmm.
I want to thank everybody for joining us. And I want to welcome ER back to the stage. And while he is coming back, hit those links. Buy Black Girls Must Die Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, and pre-order book 2.
Thank you so much.
That's my job. Tamara just did it. So please click this link. You can pre-order. Keep an eye out. It'll definitely be on our Charis pre-order list as well. But you know, mostly because this has been such a community book, as Jayne said, like, continue that spirit. Share this book with book clubs, people you know, let your library know. You know, that is a great thing for us to do for all authors, but I think especially for a book that you really want to champion. So keep that spirit going, and join us towards the end of the month for Tamara coming back. We're 99% sure it's going to be on Tuesday, October 26th. I have a little bit of a date mix up, but we're pretty sure that's the day. It'll be up correctly on the Charis calendar on Monday morning for sure. So, Jayne, thank you so much for being with us. It's a real pleasure, and we're just really delighted.
Thank you so much for having me. You've been incredibly supportive the whole way. I mean, from the OG version to now, and I'm just so excited that we were able to do this in this leg of the journey. And Tamara, thank you so much for being an incredible moderator, and this has just been so much fun. I feel like we just partied for Friday night. So
thank you for asking me. I am so honored. And everybody, you should be like tweeting, Facebooking, Instagramming, buy this book, send the links. Send a link to this interview.
Thank you so much. Can I put? I need to do a quote tile. I want to put "Tabby's all right" and attribute it to you, because I just think that's so good. I'm like, Tabby's all right. I keep thinking about that.
Perfect.
I love it.
Well, y'all be safe, take care, and continued success to both of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.